Well, silver over $100 an ounce. 100 of these little $1 notes for just 1 ounce of silver. That's mad. Now, I've made a number of predictions over my tenure of creating content, and I have consistently said that I don't think we'd ever see $100 an ounce for silver. I'll admit I was wrong. Hands up in the air. Am I sad about being wrong on predictions through social media? No, because I own silver, and just having, God, what are this? 6 coins. That's $600. That is mad. That's absolutely crazy. And what I think is more crazy is the fact that that is $600, which tells us that the $600 that you might be able to sell it for is worth an awful lot less than it used to be. And that is very concerning. So the fact that we've seen some incredible returns on silver is amazing, and the emotions of that is great, but it's spelling out some really tough times ahead for money and maybe even for precious metals more generally. So let's find out more in today's Precious Metal Ramble. Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here. Welcome to another Precious Metal Ramble, where we have down-to-earth discussions about all things precious and shiny. And of course, $100 silver is what everybody is talking about right now. And I wanted to do a bit of a reflection on how on earth did we get here to $100 an ounce for silver and $5,000 an ounce, of course, for gold. Both kind of watershed price points that are exciting if you're a stacker, exhilarating, amazing if you've got silver already, daunting perhaps if you don't have silver and you're looking to get hold of silver and or gold right now. Can be a bit tricky to navigate, but I wanted to do this retrospective of how we got here, because I've been stacking for a very long time. I've been creating content for 9+ years. In fact, it's our 10-year anniversary coming up in July, so 9.5 years now. And for a lot of that whole time period, certainly in maybe 9 years worth, the last 6 months has been a little bit different because of the craziness of the markets. But I've been a proponent to the argument that $100 silver isn't something that I thought we'd ever see. And of course now I'm sitting here and I'm having to eat some humble pie a little bit because I was wrong. I was wrong, and I'm happy to admit that I was wrong. And in fact, if you look back at some of the videos where I talked where I was saying that I don't think $100 silver is anything that we're likely to see, I said, but if I am wrong, I'll be a very happy man because of course I have a lot of silver. So yeah, it's been a bit of a wild ride, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how we've got here and of course the emotions that we're dealing with as stackers, perhaps as individuals that don't have gold and silver as well. So join me on this journey that we're all on, not just with silver, but on our channel as we march towards 100,000 subscribers. We're well into the 90s now, and we are hitting that mark at some point. There'll be a big giveaway to celebrate. So please subscribe if you're not already, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying our little commentary on the world of gold and silver. So how did we get here? I think one of the things that we've got to remind ourselves is that if we're in the camp of sort of the sensible silver stackers, which is kind of what I like to describe myself as, the realistic silver stackers, when I was making predictions back in 2017, 18, 19, seeing small movements in prices and then seeing all of these people saying it's going to shoot the moon at $100 an ounce, I was examining the world as it was then, and we've got to admit that the world is fundamentally different and also considerably more batshit crazy than it was in 2019. You've only got to look at the things that are happening in and around the world right now to understand why silver has gone to where it is, why gold has gone to where it is, and why it's happened over a relatively short period of time. Because even 2020, believe it or not, in March 2020, silver crashed down to below £10 per ounce. I think it was about $15 per ounce. So just in a short space of time, and I wish, so this is another crazy thing about the silver world. I bought a bunch of silver for my business in that dip. It was 20 kilos I managed to secure. That was all I could get. I wanted to buy more, but it was all I could get at that time. And then silver, of course, started its little rise in 2020. But if I just kept all that silver rather than actually using it for my business, I'd have made more money on it than I did from selling it in my business, which is mad. But that's just life. You can never predict those things. So for me to have predicted that silver would get to, or never predict that silver would get to $100 an ounce in my tenure making content or being a silver stacker, I was right at the time, but I was very wrong in the predicting what the world would throw at us coming forwards. Of course, we've had COVID. We've had the excessive amounts of spending that came from COVID with furlough schemes and money and just borrowing, and the pounds and pennies and dollars in our pockets just going to nothing. We've of course seen a massive drive in technology. AI is fueling an awful lot of the growth that we're seeing for precious metals at the moment. New technologies will continue to grow that, and I don't think we're going to see cheap silver. And when I say cheap silver, I mean $20, $30 an ounce, £20 an ounce. Those are long gone. That'll never happen again. It is just fact of life now. Silver is forevermore going to be more expensive. Is it still relatively cheap? Well, you compare it to gold and it is relatively cheap, of course, but gold is not necessarily used as much in industry. So it is, I think, a telling position for silver to be in. Then the world threw various different conflicts and wars at us. Russia, Ukraine, Gaza. There's just a whole host of different geopolitical situations happening in this world right now that have thrown countries, Western countries specifically, people who use dollars, pounds, euros, into even more economic turmoil because cost of living hit. We had massive amounts of inflation, 12, 13% inflation in one particular period. And all of that has continued to erode the underlying fundamentals that is fiat currency, that is money in our bank accounts. And eventually that has now started to collapse. And this is, I think, start of a currency reset. We're seeing the devaluation of currency in real time. Now, I'm not worried about the future in terms of like where we'll be in terms of central bank digital currencies. I know a lot of people are, and I know a lot of people will be thinking to themselves, it's just the beginning of the end, it's the beginning of the Orwellian societies of 1984 to have control over everyone, and the WEF, and everyone will own nothing and be happy. I don't think that's quite, I think we're going to have elements of that, and I think there's going to be big parts to play for our money and how we're going to be able to use it in the future, and that's what I am motivated by, to stack and have gold and silver in my investment portfolio. But I think from, just will the world continue to go? Yes. Will there still be opportunities and investments? Yes. Will we still be able to go down to the shops and buy things with cash? Yes. Certainly in our lifetimes. It'll be a long time before we are not using physical cash anymore and it's only CBDCs, for example. But even then, I think there'll be issues with them. So I just feel like that's not likely to happen. You just got to see in the UK how the reaction was to the idea of digital ID cards and how much we in this country actually for once stood up for ourselves and just went, do you know what, actually, no, that's a load of crap. We don't want those. It's just too much Big Brother, too much, too soon. And so the government, of course, has done another U-turn on it. It's what they do best at the moment, it seems. So not too worried about that. But what we are seeing, and back to my core central point, is that right now, money is devaluing before our very eyes. And we're seeing it play out in real time with gold and silver. And that is, I think, the start of a currency reset. Now, what that currency reset will mean, it won't mean that all of a sudden we'll get 6,000% inflation on the dollar and the pound, and we'll have to change currency, join the euro, or do what, because the euro is also going down the pot as well. So all these currencies are devaluing kind of different speeds, but relatively similar speeds to themselves over a period of time, which is meaning we're not necessarily seeing, for example, the dollar hyperinflate, but there will be fluctuations in between. But we are seeing that devaluation, and it's going to happen. And what it looks like on the other side, I don't know. Will it be gold and silver that we use on the other side? I don't think so. I don't think we're going back to gold standards. I don't think we're going back to using physical silver in our pockets to go down to the shops. That's just not practical. There are, of course, states in the US that use gold and silver and they say they're legal tender. Fine, sure, that's good for you guys, but us here in the UK, that's not the culture, never has been, certainly for the last 60 years or more. And I just don't think it's likely to be a culture going forwards. We're just not that kind of society. And I think that's borne out in that, you just go down the street and you just ask any old member of the public, what's going on with silver or gold right now? They won't know. They just don't know. I mean, it's hitting a few headlines. We're seeing a few little headlines. They're going, oh, maybe it's a bit high. But they have no idea what the actual fundamental wealth of it is. And in fact, I had a nice, interesting conversation with somebody the other day who's not really a silver stacker. They're just getting into investing in stocks and shares. They've just been basically holding cash their whole life. And in ISAs, so you're doing the right thing in terms of getting tax-free returns on investment income, but you're losing value every single year. And so they're looking now at getting into gold, but they don't want physical. They want to sort of track ETFs and things like that. Ooh, look at that milk spot on that one, not nice. But they're looking at getting into ETFs and things like that. And I don't know, paper silver, will it be a thing of the past at some point? There will be, of course, huge margin calls on these banks and hedge funds and everything that have this, and that will only drive the price of physical. In fact, that's kind of what's been driving the price up over the last couple of weeks anyway. There's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on with China right now, restricting silver exports, and the markets in the East have been way higher in terms of premium that they are over here in the UK and the US. So I think it's a really telling time right now, and we'll just have to see where that all ends up. But there are a lot of really quite worrying signs ahead in terms of money, and that concerns me. So the fact that I was wrong over these last 9 years, sort of prior to the last 6 months, where I've sort of been ramping up and saying, well, it's going to keep going up. I just don't know where the top is going to be. I will say that I think I made the right calls at the right time with the information I had, but I'm happy to admit that I'm wrong, because of course I own gold and silver, so I'm making bank right now. It's nice to have investments that are performing so well. Where they'll be in another 5 years' time, God knows, and that's the thing that concerns me most. So, I make a lot of content on this channel. I do content where I talk about people selling silver and gold, and I'm here as a business to sell silver and gold, and I have my own poured silver. In fact, we've got a little box of them over here that we are working on right now, and I will be bringing these out at some point in the year. I don't know what price they're going to be. I mean, God, we're seeing lots of people selling just bullion stuff at over £100 an ounce on social media right now. So God knows where my products will be. But we'll see how that falls. And I do worry that this is probably the last year of viability of the backyard bullion poured silver business because of the way that the market is going. But I do think there'll be a correction. I think there'll be not a big correction though. I think there'll be a leveling out, a plateauing of this huge peak. You look at all the charts, and the charts just go straight up in a line. It's like an exponential growth chart. And that's not a sustainable chart in my mind. There will, I think, be a time where that levels off. I think it will drop back a little bit, but it will start to level off at some point. And I don't know when that will be. I don't know what price point that will be. But let me tell you, we are long gone with the days of even £50 an ounce silver here in the UK. $70 an ounce is a pipe dream, I think, right now, because of the value of our currency. And it's finally catching up to where it is. And let's be quite honest and frank, silver really has been very cheap over the last 9 years. When you look at it relative to what it should be, it has been exceptionally cheap. And I've got a really good customer that he bought a lot off us in the late part of 2024. And he got in touch the other day as he needs to sell some of his silver to fund other things in his life. And that's absolutely fine. So, people want to sell, that's great. And I'm here to help them. So he's going to be sending some of the silver that we've sent him and sold to him through the Buyers Club back for us to retail on his behalf and help him get good prices for it. And when I looked up what he paid for some of it, he was paying £24 an ounce. He's tripled his money or more, maybe even quadrupled his money, depending on where the price will be when he finally sends bits in for me to sell. And that's just in like 14 months. Yeah, think about that. That is just not normal. It's just not normal. Of course, part of that is some premium stuff that is a reaction to the market right now. But Christ alive, that is a huge return in a short period of time. And that's amazing for me to have that, feedback from a buyer who's gone through the full life cycle, or will have gone through the full life cycle of finding out about silver, buying silver through our service, getting a good deal on it, not being ripped off by dealers. If he'd bought it from dealers with the VAT on top, he'd be paying £32, £33 an ounce, maybe a bit more. And he'd still have a great return, but he's made even more money from our service, and then selling it at the other end, he gets even better return than a dealer. So that you put it in perspective, he'd sell it to a dealer, he'd get £75 an ounce for it, he'd have paid £35 an ounce for it, he makes £40 an ounce. Sells it through us, he gets like £85 an ounce for it, plus 90 maybe even. £90 an ounce, he's paid £25 an ounce, he makes £55 an ounce. He's making £15 an ounce more because he's bypassed the bullion dealers, which is just magic, and that's amazing. And I feel great about that. But what I don't feel great about is the future of our cash, of our money. Have I got any cash here? I do have a little bit of cash to just put it home. Oh, look at this. This is a cool piece of cash. Had this in my change the other day. Some Scottish money. Look at that. Clydesdale Bank. £20 sterling. Amazing. They look really cool. Love those £20 notes. But they are devaluing before our very eyes. And then the two little dollar notes that I always keep in my wallet since a trip that I had when I was 15 years old to Chicago. Wow. How much different that dollar is to when I went a long, long time ago without giving away my exact age. Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So right now, Am I wrong about my predictions on silver never getting to $100 an ounce? Sure. Am I going to make new predictions? Well, I mean, it would behoove me not to, I suppose. I suppose the next big number that everyone talks about is $200 an ounce silver. Can I see it happening? The honest answer is yes, I can see $200 an ounce happening. So I'm not going to say it's never going to happen. What I will probably say is I don't think silver is going to get to $1,000 an ounce. Certainly, I'm going to say this with a degree of sort of get out of jail free clause. Not within my lifetime, certainly not within my tenure of creating content. If it gets to $1,000 an ounce silver, do you know what? I won't even care, because I will be so rich on the returns for the silver that I've got that I'll laugh away into the sunset. But I've also got to remind myself that the money that we've made on silver in terms of an investment return, it's just an evidence that the money in our bank is devaluing. So it's not really real profit. But it is real profit, because you could use the money right now to fund other things, like the gentleman selling some of his silver for our buyer's service. So it's a crazy time, and I don't know where things are going to be in the future. It does worry me, but I'm a bit protected because I have gold and silver, and I'm very happy about that fact. So I'd love to know what you've got to say about this whole situation. It would be amazing to get your feedback on it. Now, in terms of the cool kids, what are we going to get you to say? I mean, it's got to be the Scottish £20 note, isn't it? So it might have devalued, but that's a beautiful £20 note. That is your cool kid club phrase. It might have devalued, but it's a cool £20 note. So yeah, put that in the comments for a chance to win a silver Britannia, which is worth over 100 quid at the moment. That's amazing, crazy, mental. If you've enjoyed our content, don't forget to subscribe and help me get to 100,000 subscribers. We'll see you on the next video. As always, please make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.